Gotta go find Ned and MJ there.
Go.
I guess I'll see you.
Get out of here.
I'll see you later.
All right. You know where to find us.
It is weird staring at you for that long.
Welcome back, everyone. We have a bunch of Spider-Man No Way Home deleted scenes to break down, alternate ending with Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield. So if you're brand new to the channel, we are doing a giveaway for Disney Plus memberships. All you have to do to enter is be a subscriber and leave your favorite Easter egg from the movie on the video. But in the new deleted scenes they just released, you can see that when Tom Holland's MCU Spider-Man is saying his last goodbye to Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man, Andrew Garfield clearly says, "You know where to find us," before Doctor Strange's second spell then sends them back to all their original universes. Meaning that the writers were trying to set up another future Spider-Verse crossover with Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield. Make it a little more discreet, like, yes, we are planning on bringing them back, because he will remember them and he'll know where to find them. For those of you that want to see them come back in future movies, and I think that's pretty much everybody would like to see Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield come back again. There has been some discussion about that recently that I'll address later in the video, but there's a lot to unpack in this scene. When he says, "You know where to find us," it also means the writers intended for both Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield to remember Tom Holland's Spider-Man after Doctor Strange's second spell. For those of you that still have questions about what the true effects of the memory spell are, like did it wipe Peter Parker from all digital records databases? Will Iron Man's Edith AI remember Peter Parker? I'll address that in a second too. But clearly the writers also intended for Tom Holland's MCU Spider-Man to call on Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield again in their own universes. Like, you know where to find us literally in the multiverse, wink wink. You know where our specific universes are located. Meaning that MCU Spider-Man is going to use the multiverse again, just in general. Obviously, it also supports the idea that Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield will also come back at some point in a future movie. Why would he need to remember where to find them if they weren't going to come back? But I think part of the reason for that specific alternate ending was to also help set up the Venom post-credit scene too, and what was going on with the Venom character just in general with all these multiverse twists. Venom being teleported to the MCU because of the symbiote's hive memories that extended across the multiverse, and if you're still confused about that, if the first spell only brought people to the main MCU universe who already knew a version of Peter Parker was a version of Spider-Man, then when did Tom Hardy's Venom learn Peter Parker was Spider-Man? Because he wasn't seeing the broadcast identifying him as Spider-Man until he had been brought to the MCU.
Until we've uncovered the behind his web of lies.
It's all because of the symbiote's hive memories. So Tom Hardy's version of the Venom symbiote had been queuing up memories from across the multiverse to give him a big tutorial in their hive knowledge and experiences, like, let me give you a glimpse of this. And when that happened, the symbiote was accessing the memories of many different Venoms from across the multiverse, one of them being Topher Grace's Venom symbiote in Tobey Maguire's universe, and his Venom had learned that Spider-Man was Peter Parker. So that's the justification that they used for the spell bringing Venom to the MCU, and the second spell sending him back to the Venom universe. But he did leave a piece of the symbiote behind, so yes, they are setting up an MCU symbiote saga with Tom Holland's Spider-Man pretty clearly. They'll probably continue with that story thread during Spider-Man 4, even if that movie isn't just about him getting the symbiote. But in that deleted scene where they clarify everyone is going to remember everyone else, or at least some of them will remember, and Tom Holland's Spider-Man will use the multiverse again, it also just helps set up future Tom Holland crossover with Tom Hardy's Venom, if MCU Spider-Man is going to continue to use the multiverse. Because based on that Venom post-credit scene, as we saw it in theaters, you could just do an MCU symbiote saga without having to bring back Tom Hardy's Venom. But that would be way less fun. Like, why would you go through the trouble of bringing Tom Hardy to the MCU and then only have him there for a couple seconds and then never ever bring him back again? So this alternate ending deleted scene just gives them some more options for how all those future crossovers with all those different versions of Spider-Man and Venom go down. And it gives you an idea for the way that Marvel and Sony were thinking about the future of Spider-Man movies and crossovers, future of Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield, Venom. And to answer the question about Edith remembering Spider-Man or Peter Parker, the writer said they didn't spend a ton of time trying to figure that out, only that they assumed that the power of the magic twist would be broad enough that the spell would just take care of any inconsistencies or plot holes. But they also said that when it came time to make Spider-Man 4, that the writers of that movie would just interpret the spell's effects however they wanted to for the purposes of that story. So there will be a couple plot holes probably when they make Spider-Man 4. I'm sure in like 3 or 4 years when they make that movie, there'll be hundreds of YouTube videos about these. But the writers also explained that they developed alternate post-credit scenes for both Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield, and originally it would have been more than just the Venom scene in the Doctor Strange 2 trailer. Their post-credit scenes would have just shown what happened to both of them after Doctor Strange's second spell sent them back to each of their universes. Like Andrew Garfield would have been more inspired to become the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man that his Gwen Stacy wanted him to become. He wasn't going to be as dark or rageful. He also kind of thought of himself as the lame Spider-Man. That was meant to be a meta joke about his amazing Spider-Man movies. Like each of the different versions of Spider-Man kind of made fun of themselves a little bit.
I'm lame compared. Like I fought a Russian guy in a rhinoceros machine.
Andrew Garfield kind of thought of himself as the lame Spider-Man because he didn't have any big Avengers crossovers, and Tobey Maguire has always been thought of as the fan favorite Spider-Man. To be fair, they did make fun of Tom Holland's Spider-Man 2 when he was trying to hype up his Avengers crossovers.
I was in the Avengers.
The Avengers?
Yeah.
That's great!
Thank you.
What is that?
Wait, you don't have the Avengers?
Is that a band? Are you in a band?
But when Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man would have gone back to his universe, his post-credit scene would have just shown him going back to his family. And I don't think that they ever planned on bringing Kirsten Dunst back or showing a version of their child, at least according to Kirsten Dunst. But Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man had implied when he was talking to Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man that he eventually was able to start a family with his version of MJ, telling him that it was possible to have a family and be Spider-Man, because that was Andrew Garfield's whole thing in the movie. He's like, I just don't think that it's in the cards for us to have normal lives because we're Spider-Man. But I think they could pay off that Tobey Maguire twist in some future movie with a version of Mayday Parker, who is a version of his daughter who gets his Spider-Man powers in the comics and becomes a version of Spider-Woman when she gets older.
I wouldn't give up. Took a while, but we made it work.
Yeah.
Yeah, me and MJ.
And for those of you that want them to make Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man 4 and Amazing Spider-Man 3, Tobey Maguire actually said he specifically told the writers not to get too far into his timeline after the events of Spider-Man 3, because presumably they'll cover that backstory in some future movie when he comes back again. I did a video a couple years ago about the plot of Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man 4 because all the storyboards leaked out. Sam Raimi had already finished the script. They only canceled the movie like right before they were getting ready to roll camera, and then they rebooted it with the Amazing Spider-Man Andrew Garfield movies, obviously.
Revisiting, you know, what was part of my history and getting a chance to like come together and a way to revisit and just to get back into that. And I don't want to say like close the chapter, but revisit and have certain resolutions, and just join in this like loving creative spirit.
The main villains of Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man 4 would have been a version of Vulture, played by John Malkovich, and a version of Mysterio, played by, wait for it, Bruce Campbell. Their backstories would have been way different from what we saw in the MCU, but as we saw in Spider-Man Homecoming, Spider-Man Far From Home, they did bring back elements of those characters and stories. Andrew Garfield is also really open to coming back as Spider-Man. This is what he said about that recently.
Would you do it again? Would you put the suit on if given the opportunity?
You know, never say never. I mean, it's a character that's always gonna be so meaningful to me and so beautiful to me. And again, it comes back to service, you know. I think if there's a way, because that's what that character is all about. He's all about serving the greater good and serving his fellow people, his fellow, you know, serving humanity and all life, you know. So if there's a way for me to continue to add to the legacy of that character in a way that feels like it's of service to an audience, of service to the themes, the themes that Stan Lee kind of, injected that character with, I'm open, of course. I'm very, very open.
Let me know in the comments, though, where do you want to see Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield come back in future movies? Because of what they did with Spider-Man No Way Home with the multiverse and with Doctor Strange 2, Multiverse of Madness with all the X-Men coming from the Fox Marvel movies, really anything is possible. Like, there are no limits anymore. But congratulations to Thorin Woods, you're the giveaway winner for my last big Marvel video. Please email me on the About page of my channel so I can get your contact details. Everyone click here for my new Marvel Moon Knight Episode 1 trailer video and Easter eggs, and click here for more Spider-Man No Way Home deleted scenes with Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield. Thank you so much for watching, everyone stay safe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.